capacity that I am here today. That's F-A-R-I-D-E-S-A-C-K. Okay. There has been the rather unkind message on social media that came from Sashi's account, and Shashi has responded to that shortly after that subsequently, but in the nature of social media, it has done the rounds far and wide, long before anything else can be done. Whatever starts living, unlike with human life, these days whatever starts living on social media never dies. Anyway, so yeah, we are here to deal with the case. Shashi approached BDS 2 days ago to talk to us about her own position and how it has come to this. And then we had an extensive 2 meetings with her about the way forward. None of this, so it was basically her initiative. Subsequent to that, to the social media post, there has been, understandably so, with the vibrancy of our democracy, and largely the vibrancy of social media, there has been a lot of response, and some of them have been rather unkind. Unfortunately, not unusual also, have been rather unkind, and there have been threats made to Shashi, we're given to understand, by those who opposed her initial views. And subsequent to that, when news of her retraction got out, regrettably, there were even more threats, but this time from the Israeli lobby. And so it seems as if the Israeli lobby vied for threats and intimidation and so on, and that is despite the appeal or the complaint from the South African Jewish Board of Deputies yesterday that she was pressurized to withdraw her statement, and that this is a failure of freedom of speech and our country's right to freedom of speech. So it seems in the case when you want to say that the Gazans or the Palestinians are evil or that they belong to the slime holes of this country, then you're free to do that. But when you want to point to any of Israel's things, then other slurs get thrown at you. You're anti-Semitic, you're Holocaust denier, and so on. So freedom of speech seems to flow one way for a particular sector. Well, I guess many political entities in our country operates in this way. We claim a commitment to freedom of speech as long as you support our speech. So unfortunately, there's been a lot of threats since, and enormous pressure. It's not, I don't know, I mean, it's pressures like this and death threats are quite traumatic, okay? And while the person who says, I've received death threats, is expected to kind of say, I received so many, or it came from so-and-so, I couldn't identify it. It is really Sashi's prerogative to go into the details of this, but they're always traumatic, and I'm generally reluctant, you know, to kind of reopen trauma in the court of the press. Anyway, we are here today. Mohammed Desai will be speaking to us first. Mohammed is the director of BDS South Africa, and that will be followed by Shashi in her own statement. And then we have Dudu Masango from the South African Council of Churches. So without further ado, we go to Mohammed Desai. Right.
Is it fine if I switch here? Or should I swap with the chairperson?
Mohammed generally has a hectic pace, but it would have been nice if he found occasion to comb his hair before he stepped into this press conference.
So, friends of the media, friends in the media as well, those that have come out to support Shashi. Just some housekeeping. The one is our spokesperson, Kwara Kikana, who's far better looking than me. She's in hospital, and so unfortunately you have to bear with me for today. So my name is Mohammed Desai, the coordinator and director of BDS South Africa. There's a short statement that we'd like to read out as BDS South Africa, and we will also distribute it to members of the media. Firstly, as BDS South Africa, we'd like to reach out and we'd like to commend actually what we see as a positive outcry on social media, the positive outcry that we've seen in the last 48 hours or so. Politicians, celebrities, influencers or social media influencers should all be held accountable to public scrutiny. And some argue precisely because of the wide amount of reach and influence and weight that they carry amongst members of our community and members of the public, that they should be even more informed and aware of pertinent social and human rights issues. So we, in a sense, celebrate the engagements, the discussions that have been taking place on social media around this issue. This is a reflection of our democracy, of our hard-fought freedoms, including, as Professor Isaac had mentioned, the freedom of expression. That said, BDS South Africa condemns all forms of racism unequivocally, including any form of anti-Semitism, and BDS South Africa condemns all forms of violence, as well as intimidation and bullying, no matter which quarter it may come from. We do, however, caution that there are some that would like to suggest that holding somebody accountable through social media or through letters is automatically construed as a form of bullying and intimidation, and we distance ourselves from this view. The actual cases, of such should be reported to relevant authorities, is our view, but general engagement should flourish, and we should welcome this. The expression by various sectors of South Africa has contributed to what we consider as a positive space that we are now in regarding this issue, a future-looking space. The statement that was copied and pasted on social media by Shashi Naidoo was, from the outcry, accurately describes it as hurtful, as derogatory, also as inaccurate. I think that's probably one of the more serious issues there. And we join fellow South Africans in rejecting the sentiments that were expressed in that statement. A little bit of background. We met with Shashi yesterday afternoon. We spent about 2 hours. And if we could please engage. It was her initiative to reach out to BDS South Africa. She did this on her own accord. And subsequently, 2 BDS South Africa representatives met with Shashi yesterday afternoon, that is Tuesday. Some are suggesting that this is what you call it, face-saving or a business decision or a calculated move. Look, BDS South Africa, human rights work that sustains us, comes out of a place and must come out of a place of love, must come out of a place of compassion, of empathy. This is what drives us, and we are not only convinced for the lack of a better word, due to the evidence. Shashi was really open. We had the first time that we had met her, she showed us WhatsApp messages. She showed us the person who sent her the statement that was copied and pasted. But even beyond the evidence that was shown to us that we never necessarily asked for, we were, after our discussion, the 2 of us that visited Shashi at her home, we were also we're also humbled by the sincerity, by the genuineness, and by the honesty in which the discussion and engagement took place. Shashi was pretty open with all of this that I've heard. I've made a mistake, and friends, I mean, who of us have not made mistakes? It's human to err. It's human to make a mistake, and so there is also a certain strength in and even courage in accepting our mistakes on the one hand, but also making good. Whether accepting it due to an outcry or being informed by others, there is something to be said about wanting to make good. And so we view this as a positive step. Shashi Naidoo has taken a decision to accept the proposal of going on a fact-finding visit to Palestine, guided, the itinerary of which would be guided by, and Dudu Masango would talk about it, by the South African Council of Churches, as well as the South African Jews for a Free Palestine. Both these organizations are very familiar with taking delegations of South Africans, in particular the South African Council of Churches taking church leaders and church members to Palestine, because there's always this confusion, between your biblical Israel and the modern state of Israel, between Israelis of the Bible and Israelis of the modern state, created in 1948. And so the South African Council of Churches has for the last 10 or 15 years been part of a program taking delegations, so they will be guiding this, as well as the South African Jews for a Free Palestine, who have also been increasingly taking young Jewish people in particular that are disillusioned with the narrative coming out of Israel, that are dissociating and distancing themselves from the Israeli narrative. We view this trip, we view this accepting or this decision by Shashi as a very positive, concrete, and practical step by Shashi. In a sense, also, to be honest, we're also going to be holding Shashi accountable through the trip and her feedback, and watching and waiting to see what sort of reports are given. So it's not about, so we are going to be watching and waiting. And the trip is also not only, as in Shashi's own words, is a journey that, in her words yesterday, it'll be a journey of educating herself, of listening, of learning, and of sharing. And so we encourage all members of media that have come here in their numbers to follow that development closely. We fully support the ANC as the governing party's proposal made a few months ago for there to be a series of workshops and engagements and programs with artists, musicians, particularly and specifically on this issue of Palestine and Israel, as well as the cultural boycott of Israel. This was a statement that was issued by Minister Lindiwe Zulu as in her capacity as the head of international relations. We have been in touch with Minister Zulu subsequently, and we hope that this will be rolling out in due course. We view Shashi Naidoo's shift on this issue within the larger context of celebrities, artists, musicians, actors, and others who are joining not only the ranks of human rights causes, but also of the Palestinian struggle against Israeli apartheid in particular, and specifically joining the boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel movement. This year alone, celebrities such as Jesse Williams of Grey's Anatomy, Rosario Dawson, also of Hollywood, over 25 UK artists, the director of Portugal's National Theatre, Shakira, of course, the musician from Colombia, Natalie Portman, Brazil's most famous musician, Gilberto Gil, have all in the last few weeks and months either cancelled Israeli gigs, backed the BDS movement, lend the support to the Palestinian struggle, or have spoken out on Israel's occupation. And so we view this issue, this incident, within that larger context. Members of the media will also recall just 2 weeks ago, Argentina's football team had cancelled their match in Israel, following again a public outcry over that game. Locally in South Africa, one of the most well-known and controversial, as well as award-winning films to have come out was The Wound in Gaza. And The Wound was produced or directed by John Trengrove. And John Trengrove took the very progressive, bold, and courageous decision last year to withdraw from one of Israel's flagship festivals, the Tel Aviv LGBTQ festival that took place in Tel Aviv last year. And so there is this momentum, and we view today's press conference within that larger momentum. Simpiwe Dana, Tumi Molekane, various other artists, Kagiso Ledicha from Catching Feelings, have all been participating in such platforms in recent time. So we view today's press conference and engagements that we have had since yesterday as a turning point on this very particular and specific issue. We think that is forward-looking. We think the idea of a trip is welcomed. We fully back that. It's opening up a new chapter in a sense. In particular, we as BDS South Africa fully accept the apology that was published yesterday by Shashi Naidoo on social media, and we back her decision, as mentioned, to go on this fact-finding mission. Perhaps to end, some on this issue have taken, some on this issue who have traveled to Israel or who have broken the boycott or who have taken a very arrogant position, dismissing all and any public comment or commentary. And there is a bit of a difference that we experience in our engagement with Shashi Naidoo, somebody who's willing actually to converse, somebody who's willing to engage, somebody who's willing to be wrong. And some of our biggest flag bearers of the BDS movement, for example, Roger Waters, he actually crossed the picket line in 2006. He defied a call to boycott Israel, but today he's one of our biggest promoters of the cultural boycott of Israel. Macy Gray as well, after her return from Israel, she said, if I knew now what I knew then, I would never go. I fully regret this decision. And again, she's supported various BDS campaigns since then. We must never give up. We must never give up on each other. This is perhaps one of the lessons of being human. And we hope and are confident that only but good will be coming from this. As a BDS movement, as a Palestinian struggle, we again would like to reach out and commend the members of various organizations and communities, a broad spectrum of South African society that have been vocal on this issue. We do see it as a very clear indication that there is a shift within our own country on the issue of the support for the Palestinian struggle. And last, and there's one thing that we can all learn from this. From this issue is both. Members of media, I think us as BDS South Africa is, don't copy and paste, guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
Prof, I swap with you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I'll do the next. No, yeah. Shashi. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Friends, I'm not accusing the media of it, but I'm very conscious of the phenomenon that if one person were to make a small black dot on that white board now, and you were to ask people, what do you see? They will tell you, I see a white dot. Nobody will tell you, I see a white board. They'll say, I'll see a black dot. So being conscious of that, I just want to clarify, and knowing the mind of the board and the director very well, I want to clarify something. Mohammed said that we'll be watching and waiting Shashi on this trip. Now, watching Shashi does not mean we're going to be monitoring her trip and we're going to be monitoring what she says when she comes back. Basically, we'll be taking a keen interest in her visit and in the consequences thereof. We have no intention of policing anybody. We enjoy, as BDS, the public support that we get from public figures. That's great. But it's not our job to monitor specific people and how they are doing in the growth of their ideas. We could have asked Shashi to go on a solidarity trip to Palestine. We did not, because Shashi evidently, and it's not a crime, to be unaware of many, many things in the world. Shashi evidently came from a position of not knowing, and she wants to get to a position of knowing. And you can't go on solidarity trips unless you know. And so that is why the trip is one of knowing and get to know. And it is not BDS's responsibility to monitor. That veers on the propaganda, on the mind control, and we're not into that business at all. Having said that, Shashi, it is over to you.
So, I think I was speaking to a friend of mine this morning that asked me why would I be doing the trip to Palestine, and I said that, look, I've made a very public apology, and a part of that apology was to educate myself and to re-educate myself. And me approaching BDS, and I want to make that very clear, is I'd approached BDS myself, but I also want to know that in no way does this mean that I'm radicalizing myself to one side or radicalizing myself to another, because I feel like almost this entire debate has also sparked to become a political debate, and you almost felt caught up in the middle. I feel for me this is a humanitarian issue. I've been very disappointed in myself for not knowing and being fully aware of what was happening in Gaza, and sometimes ignorance can be just as bad as having those thoughts. So it's been a tough couple of days, but I think a lot of people have asked me about are you worried about losing work? Are you the endorsements? I think from my side that is not a primary concern of mine at the moment. I think rightfully so a lot of brands should distance themselves from all this conflict, but the one thing I think I've realized in all of this, I said to Mohammed, do you think anyone will come today? I was expecting to see 1 or 2 people here, but I do have a voice. So if that is the only thing I have left, I can use that now in a positive way, or I could sit back and say, look, I give up, I'm going to cry myself, and we all know I cried, but I can stay crying, I can say I'm going to kill myself, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the voice that I have to discuss the humanitarian issues, to share what I learn. And as I said to him, it's a journey, it's going to be a journey for me. And I hope that other people that might perhaps have been ignorant before can share in that journey with me, learn more, know more, understand more. I feel certainly in the last 48 hours, the last 3 days, my eyes have been opened to what is happening. And you can't unsee, when you've seen, you can't unsee that, you can't unread it. So I think my life has changed its course in a way, and probably started a completely new journey for me. But yeah, I think, sorry can't just be a word, it must be an action, and my apologies will come in my actions moving forward.
Thank you very much, Shashi. That's Dudu Masango from the South African Council of Churches.
Thank you, Professor Farid, and good morning to everyone. And we, as South African Council of Churches, we are here to give support. We know as Christians we are called to accept when one apologizes. And when one apologizes, you cannot turn them away. It is important to listen to the apology. And when we see the genuineness, whether we see or we don't see the genuineness in that, it is not for us as people to judge. So the South African Council of Churches, we are really supporting the move, especially of wanting to know, of Shashi wanting to know, and giving herself the move of saying, I have not known before, and now I am told that there is something that is wrong in me that I have said, and what can I do right? And in that, you realize in doing so, you need to be amongst those people you have wronged. And in that, we will be holding her hand as the South African Council of Churches in moving forward in the terms of wanting to know and correct and rectifying the wrong that one does. We are taught as Christians that it is not for us to judge, but it is for us to help and assist one who is willing to rectify their mistakes. It has therefore been an important move when we heard that Shashi has come forward to say, I have seen that I've done wrong, and how can I do right? And we welcomed the move of the BDS South Africa of opening their doors to her and allowing her to speak out what is in her heart. We must be aware as a person, when you do things, there are things that you do unaware, and you only realize after, when you get the slashes and the slam hammers, that there is something wrong that I did, and you accept that you have done wrong. Therefore, as coming from the Christians, we say to the public, let us not judge a person, but let us open our arms and our eyes and listen to what the person is saying, in terms of not all of us know what is right and what is wrong. But when one comes out and teaches us, it's a lesson that we are getting from her. And let us learn from that, and let's walk with her the walk. It's difficult to be in a position that she is in right now, because when you think you know, and you take things from other people that think they know, and you use that as your own, it's a mistake. It's good that you learn from that mistake. So we support Shashi as the South African Council of Churches, and we'll work with her. In the trip, there is a lot that she's going to see. It's not only the side of the Palestinians. The goodness of the trips that we do not show people only what Palestine is about, but we also show what Israel is about. Because for us, it's important that the two, that is Palestinians and Israelis, someday sit down in a table and speak peace and justice for the both of them. So there is a lot that you are going to learn in the trip that you are taking, but the main thing that we say, when you do take this trip, do not take it with a conscience of what you have done, but open your eyes for you to see more what is in the land in Palestine, and the people of Gaza will love you. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Just before I open the discussion to the floor, the South African Jewish Voices for a Free Palestine have sent their apologies. They were unable to be here. They would very much have wanted to be with us. They will be issuing a press statement within the course of the day, hopefully. Well, I think we expect one in the next hour or so that you could utilize in your own, as you file your stories. The second point that I wanted to make, and it's very important, it came out in Shashi's own comments here, is that it doesn't mean that she is now swinging from one side rabidly to another side. It's a question of self-growth. It's a question of self-awareness. And generally, organizations, including human rights organizations, regrettably, often engage in the instrumentalization of human beings, where we just use people for our own causes. We don't see the person behind it, the person with feelings, the person with doubts, the person with anxieties, the person with clumsinesses, the person with gifts. We only see our own cause, and how can we use people in the negative sense, of course, where you instrumentalize people and see them only as clinical, cold tools for you to achieve your political objections. BDS certainly isn't one of those organizations, despite the fact that we are being portrayed in that way. The second thing, Shashi will be answering questions now, But I was just thinking, as she deals with her questions, you're dealing with somebody who's been, since yesterday, has been, and throughout the night, been subjected to a barrage of really vicious, of a lot of viciousness. And sadly, this viciousness doesn't only come from the Israeli supporters. This viciousness also comes from people who are supporting the Palestinian cause. Kind of, it's not enough, What do you want people to do? You want them to go and commit suicide, to go and hang themselves? Because, we need to be very careful. I mean, there's a deficit of generosity amongst the people who are politically minded. And unfortunately, there's an abundance of viciousness amongst far too many people. So with that in mind, people, or remembering that, it's open to Shashi now. You will identify yourself in which media house you represent, and then take it from there.
3 hands at a time.
Sorry?
3 hands.
What are you comfortable with? 2, 3 at a time, or one
at a time?
We'll take one at a time.
If they are.
No questions.
Here we go.
Is it Conrad from ENCA?
ENCA, yes.
After you posted the post on your Instagram, when did you realize that something was wrong? Was it after backlash, or when did it hit you?
So I'd said this before. I'd done that. I'd put my phone away for a little while, and then come back and just seeing this. What's going on with my Instagram? It's normally a couple of likes, but then it was just a barrage of comments. And I realized, oh no, what have I walked into? And then I, in my haste, quickly tried to delete the comments that I'd made, realizing what have I done. So yeah, it was just an hour later, probably afterwards, and I tried to delete the initial comments, but obviously, as you know, social media, it lives forever. Yeah, so if that answers the question.
Yes.
My name is Shadia. I'm from the Daily Box. I have a question for BDS. I want to know what exactly do you guys hope to achieve by with this whole press conference? Of course, I commend Shashi for thinking about what she's doing and obviously trying to make it better and showing her apology. But I want to know, what does BDS hope to achieve? We've seen a number of celebrities. We've seen Black Coffee. We've seen Gareth Cliff all making terrible statements or performing in Israel. And I want to know why support Shashi? Why this whole press conference today?
Mohammed?
Well, I think it's so. Firstly, we were approached by Shashi, not the other way around, and there was a genuineness that we saw, and a sincerity on going on the. I mean, Shashi even spoke. Look, these 2 dates I'm not available, but in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, this is when it can happen. And so there was a real proactiveness on her part, and so that was the idea of sharing this positive news with others, hoping that it will inspire others to also follow in her path and to share in her journey.
But that people may also, excuse me, in general also learn, to exercise greater caution. There aren't many people in the DA who are going to be hastening with posts defending colonialism, for example. And there's a reason to that. Yes. Yes, you says.
How about from Jacaranda FM? I have 2, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, just in terms of the death threats, are you doing anything about it? Do you want to do anything about it, and what kind of threats are they? And my second question is for BDS, and you can answer it if you want. Doesn't it send a message that people need to be in Palestine to understand what's going on? And I'm just asking because, it's...
So in terms of the death threats, and there were more than death threats. There were some terrible, vicious things. I think people saw a lot of things on my timeline and assumed that was the extent of it. But there are things that I got straight to my phone. I don't know how people got my phone number, or, I've chosen not to speak of it anymore because I think it makes it seem that the other side is extremely militant, and when they actually, I think the backlash that I received I see it now as something that was a necessity. Like, how would I have been called out and known what I'd said was so wrong unless people had called me out? So a lot of that I've kind of taken upon myself. And I'd even said, Mohammed said, you need to stop doing it. But I'd read every single one of the messages and comments because it was kind of a form of self-punishment. Like, I wanted to punish myself and read and feel that pain of what I'd done. But I don't want to focus on the negativity of it, because I think then it makes people were just very angry and people act in haste and say things. So I'm not acting up on it. I think I think a lot of emotions have settled. And I can answer in my regard of the trip to Palestine and saying that you can't understand. I don't think that's the case. I think this has kind of sparked I think people are seeing now that there is such a conflict within our country, like the differences of opinions. And my thing is not to politicize it. I don't want to be politically active in this, but I see the humanitarian aspect of that. And unfortunately, when this term comes in social media influencer, and what do you use your influence for? So I think it goes without saying that I'm not going to be influencing people to wear jewelry or clothes for the foreseeable future, but I want to use that influence now to promote peace, to see the humanity of the situation. So I think I'm appreciative to BDS, to the South African Federation of Churches, for giving me this opportunity to do that, and hopefully through people seeing my journey and me sharing that journey and what I may be learning, they can learn themselves. Because I know for a fact that many of my friends have said, sure, before this I didn't know, hey, I was also unaware, I was also ignorant. So if I could educate just one person to the plight and the suffering that is happening, their children suffering, women, there's just so much. If I can change just one person, I think that it would have had value.
I'll take that one at the back, and then I'll come to this one, and then I'll come to this one. Go ahead, sis.
So my name is Joanna from the Huffington Post. I just want to know, have you forgiven yourself? And number two, who's going to be carrying the costs of the trip?
Have I forgiven myself?
You don't have to answer that, my darling. You don't have to answer. Okay. I'll give.
Not entirely. I think it's work in progress, and I think I'm working towards that. And it's not just Sorry.
That's okay. You can stop there if you want.
No, that's fine. I think as much as you apologize, and it is about forgiveness, but to myself, which I don't think I've done entirely yet. But I think in my actions, not only do I can give myself that forgiveness, but hopefully earn the forgiveness of those around me. And then the cost of the trip, my mom will be going with me. We've said that we will be paying for the cost of our trip.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Sheena Mohammed from Joburg today. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you a controversial question. I do commend you, though, on your courage, and thank you for your apology for everyone who holds Gaza close to their heart and the fight there. I suppose it's one thing to have an opinion, but Donald Trump also came under a fire worldwide when he said Africa is a shithole. So unfortunately, I'd really like to understand the context in which you made that very harsh statement referring to Gaza as a shithole.
So at the beginning of my meeting with BDS, I have explained what happened, and I think a lot of people, because when initially, and I also have regrets in giving telephonic interviews because your words can be taken out of context. So what had happened was I posted a picture with a friend who was a DJ who'd chosen to perform in Israel. Someone had written nasty comments about his pro-Israeli views, and my exact wording to my friend was, look, I want to defend my friend. what can I say as an educated decision, because my knowledge isn't sufficient of the situation in Israel and Palestine. Can you help me draft an educated response? So I had to then, when we had the meeting, I said, look, people are doubting the sincerity of what I'm saying. Can I please show you my phone? I've taken it out and showed that that is exactly how it happened. They saw the timeline, they saw that, and I idiotically I was in Ibiza on a sponsored trip, having a good time, just, copy, this sounds, I read the first few lines which spoke about dates, and then just copy paste. So it wasn't my commentary, and like it was important for me for them to know that I was telling the truth in terms of how the commentary on my page transpired, so that they can trust what I'm saying. Yes, it's not my choice of words, and I think every single person who read it that is close to me said, Sashi, that is definitely not your words. My mother said, Sashi, like, who wrote that? Everyone wrote to me that knows me and said, who wrote that? That wasn't you.
Again, thank you I admire your courage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Sashi. I admire the
So
fact that
your name and where you from?
I'm Nadia. I'm from social media, and the people that are watching this have one question, and I'm here to just try and make your life easier after this.
Okay.
So the only question everyone wants to know is, why did you give conflicting statements to the newspapers?
So exactly as I'd said now, why I regrettably gave telephone interviews. So I was in Spain at the time, and I gave telephone interviews explaining what had happened. So there's this thing of broken telephone, when you say, this is what happened. I'd asked a friend to give me an educated response. So the one journalist took it to mean that I'd given my friend to type out the message. Another journalist took it to mean like how it happened, of copy and pasting. So when you're giving a telephonic interview and you can hear them clicking, often there's a broken telephone, and that's why it was very, very important for me at the start of my meeting with BDS to say that here is my phone, verifying the account as it happened, because that yes, it does look bad, but I can't, and that's why I've now stopped entirely giving telephone interviews or speaking to anyone over the phone. Actually, I've stopped speaking to anyone for that matter, because I don't want my words to be skewed. I needed to say, and that's what's important for me to hear. I need to speak my truth. I think this has become a political debate. A lot of people have wanted me to. I've been sent so much information, both sides and from either side, and that's great, because at the end of the day, I've made a commitment to educate myself. And isn't part of that education knowing both sides and trying to get an understanding of both sides? But I think what's for me now moving forward of significance to me is not the politics but the humanitarian issues.
Sorry, can I just come in there? I mean, we actually felt stupid when Shashi was showing us the messages. Like it was as if we were like policemen and detectives or whatever, having to see the evidence. But she did show it to us. She explained the copying and pasting. She showed us what she had copied and pasted, and it's just amazing, like some of the weird theories. Like one journalist calls and says, so Mossad is not paying Shashi to do this, they didn't pay her to put that post up on her social media, and it felt outrageous. I don't even raise this Mossad thing with Mossad is an Israeli intelligence agency. I didn't even raise it with Shashi because it was so ridiculous, But do be rest assured that she did go through the chronology of events and show us the various messages and the copying and pasting, which we won't do in future.
Yes. Is there any other hands that are up? There's 1, 2, and then there are 3, and then we'll close. So it's 1, 2, 3. Yes, to you, sis.
I saw a report that your house is under security. If you can just confirm.
I'd been offered security when I'd returned. Someone had said, so my house, I was offered security, but my mom flew down from PE to be with me, so she's all the security I need. She's been taking good care of me.